Yo, what up? Ogechi Aghaji, aka Oaghaji here with another video, and it's time for another review. Now, before I begin this review, just want to let y'all know, as usual, that if y'all hear any talking and background noises and whatnot, that is my family. So, with that out of the way, let's begin. Now, today's review is going to be on the third story arc in the 1985 Delinquent martial arts battle shonen manga series Sakigake Otokojuku, and that is the Dai Ishin Pa-Lien Seiha arc, aka the Great Trembling Conquest of the Unified Eight arc. Now, this particular story arc is where Otokojuku will find its identity. You know what I'm saying. Whereas the first story arc is like early gags and whatnot, just like in Kinika Man back in 1979, and then with the Kyoto and Dayon Kyozotsu arc, aka the Four Great Trials of Terror arc, it's getting a little bit more serious. And now with this arc, this is where it finally find its identity. You know what I'm saying, which is cool. Now, this particular story arc starts off right after the previous one, which I reviewed yesterday, which is the Kyoto Dayon Kyozotsu arc, aka the Four Great Trials of Terror arc, where Momotaro and the rest of the Otokojuku again came back from that after their victory, which is a very tough one, I might add. And they're brought back into health due to the Otokojuku third years. You know what I'm saying? Everyone's, at peace, learning and all that. Tomaru gets into a little trouble, especially by one of the teachers, Onihige. And now he has to hold up a candle bathtub, which is like Otokojuku specialty, which is said to have originated in ancient Greece and Sparta, which is said in the Minmay publishing, which is cool. And Tomaru wasn't fond of this punishment, and then one of the Thuriers came in and messed things up for Tomaru, and he almost got burnt. Luckily, he wasn't killed, but, just some slight injuries with the little hair all messed up. And, they decided to invite the first years, Momotaro, Jay, Togashi, and Ryuji, and Tomaru into a little invite to the Tendo Shrine, basically. And it's by the head of the third years of Otokojuku, Daigoin Jaki, which is a name that sounds all too familiar with Togashi, since his brother got killed or just been severely injured by Daigoin Jaki. You know what I'm saying? And, and this really boils up, Togashi's blood. You know what I'm saying? As we come to find out that he wants to avenge his brother by killing Daigoin Jaki. And so Momotaro, Jay, Togashi, and Tomaru all went to the shrine. And first they meet up with Dokuguntetsu, who has a giant disc. You know what I'm saying? And he throws it, and he's very good with it. And he's also very agile, as we come to find out. He gives him a riddle, and, he tries to, and Togashi, and they're all trying to find the answer. But, after a little scuffle, especially with Togashi, they Dokuguntetsu decide to let him in, especially since they proved themselves. And then they go on to the next guy, which is Henshoki, who is a master of an ancient Chinese kung fu style known as the Nanchao Body Temple Training Fist, and one of its signature moves, the Tenpin Shoha, or the Natural Aptitude Shockwave. And this, shocks the hell out of Jay, who came in to fight him. And so Jay decided to give him the mock punch to blow out the candles, just like Henshoki did earlier. Now, the Tenpin Shoha originated in ancient China during the Ming Dynasty, which is pretty interesting. But anyway, Jay is having a bit of a hard time against Henshoki since he's very skilled. You know what I'm saying? And despite the trials and tribulations, Jay was able to come out tough, but delivering a very powerful mock punch, which is awesome. And then, the four continue on and they meet Barandino or Daishokudino. This guy, he's a very particular one. He's very circus-like, very reminiscent of circuses that we have here in the West, which is pretty cool. And he's kind of like this magician type of character, you know what I'm saying? And and Toromaru comes in, and he faces a lot of trials and tribulations by Daishokudino or Barandino. But despite that, Toromaru came on top as well. And now they get to the main boss, which is Oaghaji. Togashi closes the door on the three and decides to face Oaghaji head on, and he fails. And then Momotaro and them came in, and Momotaro scolds Togashi, "Hey, you can't be doing this alone. You got friends. Your brother was, we're sorry about your brother, but all this stuff you're doing, it won't do you any favors for him and you." And so Momotaro decides to fight Oaghaji in his place. And we come to see, in the early panels of this arc, that Oaghaji has this, it's like a giant, which is interesting. Especially when we come to find out that he's tall, but not to that set, but it's just that he has that aura, you know what I'm saying? Momotaro and Oaghaji have their fight, and Oaghaji is definitely very skilled, especially with the sword, which is called. He has this elephant slaying sword, which originated in India, which is cool. Some South Asian martial arts in there, which is cool. Sorry, y'all, I'm just eating some Doritos. Anyway, even though, despite having a hard time, I'm saying, Momotaro was able to at least cut the sword that Oaghaji has. But their fight was interrupted by the three defeated guardians of the Tendo Shrine, which is the Dokugan Tetsu, Henshoki, Daishokudino. They want to, fight. They want Jaki to give them a chance to fight, and so they show their loyalty by showcasing the three demon Dharma tattoos, which is interesting. You come to find out that and then it's revealed. Oh, I lost a train of thought, y'all. Sorry, y'all. I'm having a little brain fart. It's revealed that Omito, Date, Hien, Raiden, and Gecko are all revived thanks to the Otokojuku 30 years. Yeah, like I said, I'm eating these Doritos here. Oh, by the way. Anyways, the principal comes in, Idajima Heihachi, or Heihachi Idajima comes in and tells them that they're all going to participate in the tournament known as the Dai Ishin Pa-Lien Seiha, aka the great Trembling Conquest of the Unified 8 Tournament. You know what I'm saying? As he tells them, I forgot to say that he reveals this along with the fact that Date, Hien, Raiden, and Gecko are all revived on top of that, which is awesome. I should have mentioned that, beforehand, but, I got those scenarios mixed up. I apologize, it's been a minute, so it's a little warm in here. So, anyways, with all that settled, the four, they all decide to agree to participate in this tournament. The teachers, they're worried. They don't want, Momo and them to participate. And, Hidemaru, Tazawa, Matsuo, and all them, they don't want Momo and them to participate too, especially what happened in the previous tournament. But Idajima insists that this is their ultimate test. You know what I'm saying? And it's, and it has to be done. So with all that settled, the 8, warriors that will represent Otokojuku, Momotaro, Jay, Togashi, Toromaru, Date, Hien, Raiden, and Gekko all participate. And and once they get there, they face with a lot of very skilled fighters within this tournament, like with Hin Shoki and Manjimaru, who are very skilled practitioners in these ancient kung fu styles. You know what I'm saying? Especially with Manjimaru, who's a very his kung fu style is like the dark fist, if I remember. And they also face, other skilled practitioners in these ancient fictional kung fu styles, like Senku and AK. You know what I'm saying? As well as Daigo Jockey. You know what I'm saying? And, we kind of find out that Dokugan Tetsu is also not only skilled with the disc, he's very skilled in the Deva King Fist style, which is like also a kung fu style, which is cool. All the 8 representatives for the Otokojuku first years face off against the 8 warriors for the third years, and these fights are very, very intense. All people, especially the fact that some of them lose their lives. For example, if Raiden losing his life with his fight against Hinshoki, even though he was giving Hinshoki them hands, right? But Jay was able to avenge Raiden with a powerful monk punch, and as well defeating Manjimaru, who I'm going to tell you right now is no slouch either. Because he's part of the third year, the 4 Heavenly Kings of the third years for a reason. But Jay was able to deliver the flash piston punch, so powerful that it pretty much breaks the muscles, tendons in your arms and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? And then, like I said, with Hien and Togashi, fight against Dokugan Tetsu and Senku, a very intense fight. With Hien, we're able to defeat Dokugan Tetsu, and with Togashi defeating Senku to avenge, Hien's death. And then we get to Momotaro and Gekko fighting against the Daigo and Jockey and AK. I almost forgot. It's Omito Date and Tomoe face off against Dino and I forgot the other one's name. The guy who uses his thumb as a finger, I forgot his name. His name escapes me, but I'll probably talk about more once we get into the next arc, which I'm going to finish reading it, by the way. But he's no slouch either with his thumb, kung fu style, pretty awesome. And then there's Momotaro and Gekko face off against AK and Daigo and Jockey. And their fights are very intense, especially with AK, defeating Gekko, even though Gekko was pulling off a good fight with his techniques. And then we get to Momotaro and AK. It was an intense fight, but Momotaro pulled through in the end. You know what I'm saying? Despite the fact that AK was no slouch, especially with his poison hand fist technique. And then we get to the final fight of this arc, which is Momotaro Tsurugi and Daigo and Jockey. The leader of the first years and the leader of the third years. You know what I'm saying? It's a very intense fight. Especially with Daigo and Jockey. He's not, he's taller than Momotaro, but not some giant. It was just that aura that he had. You know what I'm saying? And he proves to be a very formidable opponent against Momotaro. You know what I'm saying? To a point where Momotaro has to use these key battle tactics against Jockey. You know what I'm saying? With Jockey has the powerful Senku Shinpu Sho technique, which is part of his Daigo-in Ryu martial arts style. and it's intense. But despite all the trials and tribulations, Momotaro was able to come out victorious in the end, which is nice. It was like I said, it was a very powerful fight, and it was an honorable. And Momotaro eventually came to respect Daigo Jaki as the leader of the third years of Otokojuku. Heihachi Dojima comes in and he's very proud of the first years. And you know what I'm saying? And Momotaro is really angry because of all the stuff that he has to go through. But Jaki pulls him aside that, hey, believe in the principle, you know what I'm saying? And we'll see why in the next story arc, you know what I'm saying? And we come to find out that all the fighters in the tournament were all revived. Jay, Hien, Raiden, Gekko, Togashi, like I said, I said Raiden, right? Henshoki, Daishokudino, Henshoki, AK, Daigon Jogi, all of them. They were all got, revived. Thanks to, this guy, Wantarin, and his fellow Chinese martial arts guys with these hoods. Which I'm not going to get too deep into because, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, it was a very great arc. We come to find out, with what happened with Daigo Jaki and his brother, it's very heartwarming. And Goji Akashi, he walks up to Momotaro and said, he's proud of what kind of man that Momotaro has become. Especially when we get to the no, that's in the anime adaptation. My bad. But yeah, in the end, it was a very tough tournament, but the first years definitely came out on top. Overall, the Dai Ishin Pa-Lien Seiha arc, aka the Great Trembling Conquest of the Unified 8 arc, it's a very awesome story arc in the Sakigake Otokojuku manga. You know what I'm saying? I definitely recommend y'all checking it out. Not only for its action, but for its story and its characters. And the characters get some very good development. The only flaw is that, the constant revival due to the, Deus Ex Machina stuff, which is something that you will see in Kinnikuman Man and in Dragon Ball. You know what I'm saying? But hey, it's neither here nor there. Yeah, I definitely recommend y'all reading this this story arc. You know what I'm saying? It gets a 4.5 out of 5 for sure. No, I'm gonna give it I'll give it a 5. I'll give it a 5. You know what I'm saying? Despite that one flaw. Hopefully y'all enjoy this review, despite it being a little long. I apologize. There's a lot to talk about in the arc that I want to get out there as much as possible. But yeah, let me know what y'all think about this story arc, the Dai Ishin Pa-Lien Seiha, aka the Great Trembling Conquest of the Unified 8 arc, in the comments below if y'all read it already. If y'all like this video, y'all can hit that like button and share it. If y'all enjoy this type of content, y'all can subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to keep y'all notified on the uploads. Y'all can also follow me on my other social media accounts, and stay tuned for more other reviews and more other videos along the way. So with all that said, this is your boy Ogechi Aghaji, aka Oaghaji, aka the Pervy Sensei, signing out. Peace.